Good morning, Sofa Squad. It's me, Paul, with reporting live from my sofa. How's it going out there today? I hope everybody has a great Monday. We are going to be here today analyzing, discussing, going over Curtis Wright's testimony and the Dr. Teresa Sievers trial. Now, don't forget to check out the description and the pinned comments. Down there, you're going to see a link to our new Facebook group, as well as links to lots of other social media and stuff that you might be interested in. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple, don't forget to drop us a review. Let us know what kind of stuff you want to hear over there. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and review. Okay, so y'all, let's go ahead and just talk about some overview type stuff of my feelings on the defense, the state, Curtis, and all that before we get into specifics. So, Curtis is very quiet, he's very meek, and he does say that, he's in solitary, and therefore he doesn't speak a lot, and so his voice is hoarse and whatnot, which is very believable to me. Now, he does take time to think about stuff a lot, and he explains this later on by talking about car injuries he was in car wrecks and whatnot, because he falls asleep. I don't know if he's, whatever that issue is where you fall asleep suddenly. At times I think I have it. But it's caused him to get into some severe car wrecks, and it's caused memory issues, things of this nature. So maybe that's why. But he'll take a while to kind of process something, and then he'll answer whatever. They'll move on to another question, and then it seems like in the middle of that next question, he'll say, by the way, I want to add this onto the last question, or that on, or change this, or whatever. And you're kind of like, but that goes one or two ways for me. It makes it a little bit more believable to me at times, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. The defense, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, the defense and the state, I'm having just I'm not vibing it on this trial, y'all. I'm not vibing either of them. The state, I feel like with his questioning with Rodgers at times, I was like, oh my gosh, can we round it back around to the trial? To me, it just went everywhere. And then the defense, when she got up there, I just felt like, let's drop the dramatics, let's speed it up a little bit, quit trying to do Perry Mason stuff up there and just move along. We understand he's a murderer, we get that, we get it, so just continue. Now, overall, also, there is this kind of Three Stooges effect to this testimony if you listen to it, and it's another thing that the defense is kind of bringing up, because there is a little bit where it's like, and you didn't think about this, and so you decided to go to Walmart where there's cameras because why? I mean, I get it, you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong on that one. So there is this level, if you believe the testimony of the Three Stooges were taking this crime and doing it themselves. So let's go ahead and just start going over some of the key points that jumped out to me. Okay, now in the very beginning, one of the first questions is that the state asked, did you kill, or who killed Teresa Sievers? And he's like, I did, and Jimmy Rodgers. Now they go over basic stuff like, his age, his education, he's married, he's been married before, they have kids, his prior convictions, which were drug convictions, and things like that in the past. So they kind of just establish this basic type stuff that they do with a lot of witnesses like this. Now, they also go ahead and tackle the whole issue about the agreement that he is working under, which is called substantial assistance. And he does say that, yeah, I entered a deal where I'll get 25 years contingent upon truthful testimony in this case. So he doesn't have it yet. They are holding it over his head so that they can essentially get him to tell, the truth, or whatever they want, or whatever, that can add up, depending on what you believe. Now, he does admit that, before when he was questioned and whatnot, that he lied, he wasn't truthful, but that after praying and speaking to his counsel, he told the complete truth. Now, that part, I'm like anybody in that situation, I'm imagining, is going to lie at first to get their way out of it. I mean, I don't think a normal person's just going to come right out and be like, oh, you got me, so that part to me is believable. And he goes into specifics about when he lies, like when they first came to visit him, and he says, yes, I was protecting myself and the co-defendants. So to me, that's all very believable. Now, at some point in here, somebody's phone goes off, And, I mean, this happens so often, y'all. It's almost like a given in every case somebody's phone's going to go off. Well, the state is just beside himself. And he's just, so dramatic about it. And, I'm just like, I get it's rude. I understand. But just, mosey along. Let's just keep it going. I mean, pretty much anything. Because, like, that caused, like, what I call a heartbeat in the courtroom. And I'm like, no, let's welcome this. It's fine. There's signs of life in this courtroom. Because let me tell you what, this has been one of the most boring trials I have ever seen in my life. So then what they do is they go ahead and dive into the friendship that existed between all three of them. Now remember that Curtis is essentially the connection between the two. Now Curtis says that he and Mark had been friends since high school. They were really, really close. They were the kind of friends that would keep each other's secrets. This was brought up. Things of this nature. And so they're definitely trying to establish a pattern for that relationship. Now he goes in further to say really the only reason that their friendship changed is because of geographic reasons. They lived in 2 different states, but that they were still really close. That connection was still there. And then they established that yes, that turned into a working relationship. And we find out that he was doing some type of computer updates and things of this nature, things that he could do remotely. He was getting paid like $100 a month, I think he said. Curtis was on, however that works, disability. And because of that, when you're on disability, you can only work so much. There's all these rules depending on, where you are and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds to me like, at one point he did say, oh, people would buy me lunch, whatever. I'm sure he was making money under the table. It is what it is. But, they had this working relationship at a point. And he said, I think like twice in 3 years he had flown down there to actually do work. Now from there, they jumped to the wedding all of a sudden. And the state's asking him questions about that. And, he's asking Curtis about he and his current wife. And then he's also asking questions about, did you invite the Sievers family? Yes, I did. Mark was the one that came. And, he was one of my best men at the wedding. I think he had 2 best men, he said. And they go into line of questioning. And this is where the state will do things where I'm just like, why are we doing this? It's almost like, are you trying to plan your own wedding and asking him questions about it? You know what I'm saying? And I get he's trying to line up other questions, but at times it just feels like, why are you taking us down this road? So then they jump into like how the whole plot was cooked up. Now this part, y'all, okay, this is where I am just like, if it's true, because you have to go ahead and decide, do we believe the testimony or do we not believe the testimony? So I'm back and forth with it. If this part is true as to how this was cooked up, I'm like, really? This is your best friend? What? So he's saying that before Mark even got in town for the wedding, that he was texting him and he was like basically saying, look, I need to talk to you about something in private. And of course he's best friends. Okay, sure, whatever. Now from there they go into like this whole questioning about an agreement, and the state's essentially like, did something that, Mr. Sievers asked you to do cause Dr. Sievers' death, something like that. And he's like, yeah, he asked me to kill her. And this causes a sidebar, and y'all, oh my gosh. The sidebars in this trial, y'all, even the judge, I think, is over it. He's just like, oh my God. He's like, I'm looking for a reality show to go host after this because I'm done. But they do a sidebar, and on this one, that camera is angled to where you can see almost like Curtis, and then here's Jimmy over here at the thing, and I'm like, ooh, how awkward. So all that's done, they go back, they continue questioning, we're back at the wedding day. So now he says that what is going on is that Mark is essentially saying, look, Teresa's having an affair. We're probably filing for bankruptcy. He's painting this dismal picture. And that he uses like a hypothetical situation to describe what he's looking for. And he's essentially like, if someone's children were in danger of being taken away, and you knew that they would be in harm's way, could you help that person take care of the situation? So, I mean, we all know how this goes. He's speaking in tongue like this. Now, the next day while they are getting dressed, he brings it up again. He being Mark Sievers. He brings it up again, allegedly. And at this point, I'm just like, really? Like, what friend does this? He shows up, because if this is true, the only reason he showed up was to try and get him to kill his wife. I mean, period, point blank. He was not showing up to put some money in a little bag, or drop off a present, or be the best man. It was, kill my wife. And now, y'all, at one point, they show a picture of the wedding. Y'all, even Curtis couldn't tell the difference between him and Mark. They look so similar. It is weird. They could be twins. So now during these, getting dressed conversations and whatnot, it comes out that, hey, you know what, Teresa's leaving me for another doctor, and she's taking the girls. And it sounds to me like, whatever is going on, there's this insinuation that the girls are going to be in danger. So I don't know if he was alleging abuse or what, but like that is the whole thing. So this whole MO is, the girl safety, the girl safety, the girl safety, and separating the father. We do learn that Curtis kind of went through the same type thing where, he had a split and someone got full custody, and so he's sympathetic in that way. And so through this, Mark kind of changes it like, well, I want to pay someone to visit the man that she's having an affair with. And so then after that, they go into another set of circumstances that, y'all, this one, I mean, oh my gosh. Basically, he's talking about the catering, where they got the food, where they stored the food, which was at a grocery store. It was hamburgers and hot dogs. They picked the food up. They left the hot dogs. Therefore, someone had to go get the hot dogs. And I mean, y'all, I'm summing it up, but I swear to God, it felt like it was 30 minutes. And to basically be like, you left the Oscar Mayers at the grocery store. You both went and got them. The end. But it is what it is. They had to play out their little roles in the courtroom. So essentially that's going on. And it was like, Mark was like, oh, I'll go get him. Why don't you ride with me? And again, I'm just thinking, really? On this guy's wedding day? Like, I mean, it just doesn't even make sense to me. That he just seems like such a crappy person for obvious reasons. But then that too, pretend there was no murder going on. And I'm like, really? You're going to bug your friend this bad about something on his wedding day? It's just ridiculous. So in this car ride is when Curtis is saying that Mark is basically like, look, the only options to protect the daughter is to have Teresa killed. Like, that's what he comes up with. It's just, it is what it is. And he's talking about how much money they have from insurance, and that he's willing to pay like $100,000 for this. So Curtis says that he was still undecided for quite some time, like whether he was going to be part of it. But honestly, it wasn't like for a moral reason. It was more like, do I want to get caught? I think it was... me reading between the lines, I was like, he was trying to like count that money out and decide like, is that money worth it? And apparently it was. So then he talks about little minute plans about finding someone to help him do it. And then how Mark set up the whole burner phone that they called their other phones. Now he does talk about when it came down time to make the trip. And one thing that's going on here too is this, before I get to that, is he was already planning on going this weekend apparently to fix the computers or do something. And it happened to work out or whatever to where it was like, oh, we're going to be out of town, so you need to pull this off this weekend too. So Curtis had been telling people, I'm getting ready to go to Florida, I'm going to Florida. And so then obviously you don't want to keep telling people that when you know that you're also going to go kill someone in Florida. So he's essentially like, well, I quit telling people that I was going. And you're just kind of like, yeah, that's not a good look. So when it came time for him to actually go and make this trip, he didn't have any money. And so basically, Mark had to send him $600, to be able to like go rent a car and like physically get down there. Now, another aspect that's brought up when they're talking about renting the car is the fact that they went down like twice or whatever. And he's like, well, yeah, my wife is the type of person that when she found out what happened, because obviously when this took place, they called their house to say this happened. And she was like, we have to go down there and help them right away. And I'm just like, that is just a low POS. I'm like, you go down there and you murder her, and then days later, not even days later, but almost immediately after, you're going back down to attend the funeral and help the grieving family. I mean, honestly, that's just, how he could even do that is beyond me. Now, the actual day of the event, so they get there Sunday morning at like 6 a.m. Now, they know that she's not coming home till like later that evening. So, essentially, they have all day to kill. Now, Curtis on the stand, he does talk about, that he wanted to make it look like an accident, like she slipped and fell or whatever. And Mark was more of the mind of, make it look like she walked into a burglary. And so they had even attempted like, oh, well, maybe we'll do it at her work or whatever. They did a drive-by over there, so on and so forth. And they decided that the house was the best place. Now, Mark had given him like the garage door code access, things of this nature. They had looked at aerial photos of the house and kind of planned out, this is the best way to go in, this is how you do this, so on and so forth. So now that morning they go by the house too when they're doing these drive-bys. They check it out, all that type of stuff. And then they have the whole day. And so during this time is when they do the, we always have to have it, y'all. They do the Walmart run. They go by all the stupid stuff. Some of it they will be using in the crime. Other stuff like the wet wipes and things like that. You know, and even I don't know if it was the defense or the state was like, why did y'all need the wet wipes? And he's like, I don't know, I didn't buy them. So armed with all their stuff from Walmart, they go back to the house and they put the jumpsuits on. They put those on. They duct tape the arms and the legs, and they kind of get ready. So then they're going about trying to decide who's going to do what, when, where, why, how, all that. And Curtis is basically saying that he was in the garage killing time. He was not 100% sure where Jimmy was at that time, but basically the door started opening and she was home early. Now he says that he essentially dove behind some boxes, last minute type thing, and that she comes in, she parks, she's going in the door, and all this is like this it probably happened extremely fast, but it's kind of slowed down. And so she had like set one of her bags in the garage, basically near where he was hiding. And she starts to go in, and in his world, he's saying, I was like, oh, well, if she goes in and she's just putting her thing down to come out and get this, she's going to see me when she turns around. So he made the quick decision to follow her into the house. And so essentially he's like, she got into the house and she's going, and they had like a dog dish or whatever that's on a stand. And he accidentally kicked it. Well, obviously this caused a great noise. And the next chain of events are kind of, again, it happened way quicker, but she starts to turn around, and before she can, it sounds like he essentially hits her in the head with a hammer. And he says that, and I would think this too, but he's like, I thought that it would just knock her out, but it didn't. Like, yeah, she was still kind of like, you know, I mean, obviously it didn't do her any good, you know, but I thought that if you hit somebody in the head with a hammer too, that they would immediately fall, just be knocked out, but that wasn't the case. And he says basically she didn't react, but they made eye contact, and in that moment, I'm just like, because this is, I mean, obviously it was a horrible death for her to die. In that moment, she had to be so confused as to what was going on, to be like, what, why are you here? What did you do? I mean, just, I can't imagine. Just that right there, I think would make me faint. I mean, just the utter shock before you even get to being hit with a hammer. Now, he says that, like, she put her hands up or whatever to fight back and defend herself, and then he hit her, like, 3 times, I believe, with a hammer. Well, during this, he says that Jimmy Rodgers shows up with his hammer. Now, he says that Jimmy Rodgers starts, like, hitting her on the head, and she's asking, why? And at this time, Curtis looks like he's crying on the stand. Her family members are visibly upset. I mean, this is horrible testimony to listen to. Now, he says that she eventually falls to the floor. He describes it as more slow motion than that, but she goes over with her hand to the counter, is bending over, and Rodgers is like just, you know, bludgeoning her one after the other. And Curtis basically makes it out like, well, I have to go over and like put my hand on his shoulder and eventually be like, stop, you know. Now he says that basically when they were done, they changed back into their clothes before they left. They then stopped at a truck stop, and Curtis says that he threw his suit away here, and that he thought Jimmy had, but apparently Jimmy didn't. This is why it ends up on the side of the road somewhere where his girlfriend goes and takes him and shows them. So now let's go ahead and get into the defense. So the defense gets up there, and again, y'all, I was done with it at this point. It's just the defense is trying to be dramatic, and she's very slow about things. I watched this almost on the 2.0 playback speed, and even then at times I was like, come on, spit it out, let's go. But she gets up there, and basically, and this is obvious, she's trying to tear into the fact that, you know, he's got a 25-year deal, that's what his motivation, which is, you know, we're going to talk about that. So, you know, she asks, you know, do you have a lot at stake today? And he's like, just my plea deal. And they go into that, and, you know, how the others don't have this and they don't have that. And, you know, they go into all the times that he lied. Because one thing is that the defense can establish, because remember, there's not a ton of physical evidence tying Jimmy to this crime. You know, and they're probably not going to argue too much that, yeah, you know, he was there with you. But as far as everything else, it's really reliant upon eyewitness testimony. So Curtis and the girlfriend, who is saying, you know, obviously that, you know, he confessed to her, this and the other, she led them to the thing on the side of the road, the jumpsuit and all that. So, but outside that, there's not anything major tying him there. So it is kind of this doorway of like, Now there are so many sidebars when she's up there, I can't even tell you. And this is one thing that she does too, is she'll be like, you know, and I'm just like, I don't care if it's state defense, whatever, just don't do that when you're, it's just, to me, it's very unprofessional. I get it might be frustrating, trust me, we at home are, but, you know, just no. So a lot of her testimony is just about, you know, ripping apart this plea deal. Now, she does go into the fact that he is on disability, you know, about him falling asleep while driving, and that has caused his memory issues and whatnot. Because she's trying to also sit here and say, well, you lied about this, or yesterday you said this, but you didn't say this. And remember how he constantly will say something and then be like, well, I'd like to say something else or add to it or whatever. So a lot of her other testimony, too, is her kind of asking obvious questions like, so y'all went to Walmart with cameras? Now, another point she says, you know, when she's like, why didn't you use a gun? And he's like, I didn't want to use a gun. I'm a felon. And it is, you're kind of like, oh, okay. I'm glad we have morals about that. But, you know, she's like, but you're willing to help your friends murder people. And he's like, unfortunately so. That's probably the best part of the testimony, to be honest. So the state does their, you know, they get back up after she's done and they establish, you know, have we ever offered you any deals in your old cases? No, you haven't. And the state clarifies about him going to Florida because she made this huge ordeal about, you know, well, you were telling people you were going and da-da-da-da-da. Because remember, if they can kind of tie it to where it's like, well, yeah, Jimmy went, but he didn't know what you were doing or whatever. So they do establish that he was telling people that because he was going to go work. That was already set before this plan happened anyways. So it wasn't like he planned to go do the murder and then told everybody he was going down there. And a lot of the stuff, he's basically like, yeah, I know we came off like we were stupid, but we weren't planning on getting caught. And I mean, that's, you know, to me that rings true. So here's the thing. So my whole thing is this. All this depends on how or if you believe the testimony and who. So, you know, they filed a motion. This is very normal for the defense to file a motion saying the state has not proven their case. We want an acquittal. And in this one, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence. I mean, but they do this motion in almost every single case. And so this one, it comes down to what the jury's going to believe. Are they going to believe Curtis? You know, was he believable on a lot of things? Yeah. You know, he seemed like, okay, I mean, yeah, 25 years is a sweet deal, let's be honest. So he has motivation to lie. But other things, the way he carried himself made me feel like he was telling the truth. He could be lying through his teeth up there. I don't know. Do I think he has motivation to lie? Absolutely. Does it make me look at his testimony with a little bit of a, absolutely. So there's that. I'm not thinking that his story is the end-all be-all to this story. You know, because most likely he's going to downplay some of the things he did. Does anybody really want to get on the stand and say, I was the one that bludgeoned her 15 times and Jimmy had to tell me to stop? You know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is. Does he sound like the type person who would be willing to throw somebody under the bus more than they were already under the bus to get a deal? Yeah. You know, Jimmy's foot might have been under the bus because he went along, but now Curtis is like, well, if I push him all the way under, you know, I'm going to get out early. So there you go. Does that mean that I think Jimmy is innocent? No. I definitely think he was there. I think that he knew what he was going there for, the whole 9 yards. So I'm back and forth with it. But that's it. I'm going to go ahead and end this because this is getting long. A lot of people have asked me, Paul, are you still covering this? For this trial, I'm not going to lie, y'all. I just couldn't do it. I was like, this one is so boring. It is a snoozer. I can't be there for it. And I've got some other projects going on, but I'm picking out the testimony that kind of speaks to me in it. And so this testimony, I found myself watching all of it. And so that's just what I'm going to do with this. And, you know, we'll be reporting more as we find out more on it. And so that's it. I really appreciate y'all. Don't forget to join the Facebook group. Look in the pinned comments in the description. And drop us a review on Apple to let us know what kind of stuff you want to hear in the podcast. I hope all is well. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I will talk to you soon.